The night Claire took off her engagement ring, I was tuning the old upright piano in our living room. It was raining in that quiet Portland way, not hard enough to be dramatic, just steady enough to turn the windows silver. I had the front panel of the piano leaning against the wall and my tools spread across the rug when she came in wearing her charcoal work coat, her hair still pinned from the office. She didn't say hello, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, turned it against her palm and said, "Evan, we need to stop before we make a mistake." I thought she meant the wedding music. I actually looked down at the keys and said, "The processional?" She didn't smile. She removed the ring slowly and set it on the piano lid. Metal touched old wood with a tiny sound I still hear when a room gets too quiet. "You are good," she said. "You are kind. You are safe. But I can't spend the rest of my life inside a quiet room with no windows." The mint tea I had made for her sat untouched on the side table. My tuning lever felt suddenly stupid in my hand. "Are you ending this?" I asked. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them like she had practiced the answer. "Yes, before that night." I would have told anyone that Claire and I worked because we were different in the right ways. I fix pianos for a living. Not shining concert grands, mostly school uprights with gum under the benches, church pianos with hymnals stacked on top, cafe pianos that had survived 10 years of bad open mic nights. My hands smelled like wood dust, brass polish, and coffee. I drove a dented blue van with drawers in the back for felt strips, spare wire, tiny screws I could identify by touch. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked it. A piano never lied about being out of tune. It told you exactly where it hurt, if you listened long enough. Claire was an architect at a downtown firm where everyone wore black and spoke in deadlines. She designed glass buildings that looked like they had never known fingerprints. Her calendar was color-coded. She talked about awards, proposals, panels, the next big project, the next better version of herself. I loved her drive. I thought she loved my steadiness. I cooked when she came home late. I left the hallway light on. I rubbed her shoulders while she stared at drawings on the sofa. We had a wedding date circled in red and a small ceremony planned on the Oregon coast. I had found a battered upright at an estate sale and dragged it into our apartment to restore for the wedding. Claire called it impractical, then cried when I played the first 3 clean notes. At least, I thought those tears meant happiness. Later, when I replayed the months before she left, I found the loose stray threads. The calls she took on the balcony in February, shoulders hunched against the cold. The white medical envelope I saw in her bag one morning, tucked under tracing paper. When I asked if everything was okay, she zipped the bag and said it was permit paperwork, the faint smell of antiseptic on her coat some nights. The cash withdrawals she explained as messy client reimbursements. I believed her. Trust gets lazy when it's been fed for years. It lies down in the warmest part of the room and assumes nothing bad will step on it. After she ended the engagement, she packed 1 suitcase. Not the wedding binder. Not the framed photo from Cannon Beach. Not the navy sweater she always stole from my side of the closet. At the door, she looked back. "I don't want to hurt you more than I already have." For 1 second, her voice shook. I almost stood, almost crossed the room. Almost asked her to stay long enough to tell me the real reason. But the ring was still sitting on the piano between us, and my pride, small and bleeding, held me down, so I watched her leave. For 3 days, I lived like a man moving through someone else's apartment. I ate toast over the sink because plates felt too formal. I slept in short, useless bursts. The wedding piano sat in the living room with its front panel off, its wires exposed ribs. Every time I passed it, the ring flashed under the lamp. On the 3rd morning, Marlowe Cleaners called. "Your coat is ready," the woman said. I didn't drop off a coat. It's under Claire Whitman and Evan Hale, gray wool, repaired lining. Our names were still on the account together. One more domestic detail nobody thinks to separate when the world ends. I almost told her to call Claire. Instead, I walked down the block because errands were better than sitting still. The cleaners smell like steam and starch. The woman handed me Claire's coat in a clear plastic sleeve. I carried it to the van, intending to drop it at her office and be done. Then a receipt slipped from the pocket, not the cleaner's receipt. A parking ticket, folded twice. St. Bridget Medical Center. 2 nights before she ended the engagement. My first feeling was fear. Was she sick? Had I missed something? Then another paper came out. A torn note with an address outside Salem and the name of a roadside motel. On the back, in Claire's handwriting, were 5 words. "Don't tell him yet." I sat in the van with the plastic-covered coat across my lap. Rain gathered on the windshield until the street became a watercolor. I found Claire's name in my phone, stared at it, then locked the screen. I told myself the note could mean anything, but it stayed with me. By Friday, I was tuning a piano at a small Lutheran church near St. Bridget, and I kept striking the same wrong test note. When I finished, my phone showed a message from Nora, an old customer who lived near the hospital, saw Claire yesterday. Didn't want to pry, but she looked upset. She was helping an older man into a car. "Everything okay?" I read it 3 times, older man. That night, I tried to be reasonable. I heated leftover pasta in the microwave and told myself people helped older men for thousands of reasons. Fathers, uncles, clients, neighbors. Then my phone served me the kind of cruelty only algorithms can manage. A diner in Salem had posted a photo advertising Marionberry pie. Claire was in the background, slightly blurred, sitting in a booth across from a man in a gray coat. His face was turned away. Her hand was over his on the table. I set the phone down carefully beside the microwave and watched the pasta turn. The picture wasn't romantic if you looked at it with clean eyes. Her shoulders were tight. His head was bowed. A pharmacy bag sat by his elbow. But I didn't have clean eyes anymore. I had a motel address, a hospital receipt, secret calls, missing money, a canceled wedding, and a woman I loved telling me I was a quiet room with no windows. Pain is a poor detective. It finds what it is afraid of finding and calls the case closed. The next Tuesday, I had a job at a music school outside Salem. 4 practice room uprights, all abused by children with stronger enthusiasm than rhythm. The motel address was 10 minutes away. I told myself I was only driving past. The motel sat behind a gas station, 2 beige buildings, red doors, a sign missing 2 letters. Claire's white Subaru was in the lot. I drove past once, then parked across the street beside an air pump that wheezed every 30 seconds. Inside the station, the coffee machine had a sign taped to it. Broken. Sorry. I bought a bottled water I didn't want and told myself to leave. Then a motel room door opened. Claire stepped out first, wearing jeans and the green sweater I had given her last Christmas. The older man followed slowly, one hand braced against the doorframe. He was thin, almost swallowed by his gray coat. A hospital band flashed at his wrist before his sleeve covered it. He coughed into a handkerchief. Claire touched his back. Not a lover's touch, maybe. Not if I had been fair, but it was tender. Familiar. She took a scarf from her bag and wrapped it around his neck the way she used to fix my collar before winter walks. Something inside me went flat. She picked up a paper pharmacy bag he had dropped. Then she crouched in the rain and tied his shoelace. I wanted to hate her. It would have been easier. Instead, I saw the woman I had planned to marry giving her softness to someone she had hidden from me. And I felt like I had been erased from a room I helped build. I started the van before she could look across the street. That night, I began putting her things in boxes. Kitchen books. Stuff. Tape stuck to my sleeve. I peeled it off too hard and left threads behind. Claire's architecture books were stacked under the window. When I lifted one called Sacred Domestic Spaces, a brown envelope slid out and hit the floor. I should have stopped. I didn't. Inside were 3 things. A folded copy of a birth certificate, 2 receipts for large bank transfers, and an old photograph with one corner torn away. The photo showed Claire as a little girl, maybe 6, standing beside the same man in the gray coat. He was younger then, with dark hair and a tired smile. Claire wore yellow rain boots and held a paper kite. On the back, in faded blue ink, someone had written, "For the day I'm brave enough." The birth certificate was folded so I could only see part of it. Claire's name, her mother's name, another name I didn't recognize. My eyes went to the money instead. Thousands of dollars transferred over 2 months. By the time I heard her key in the lock, I was standing in the middle of the living room with the envelope in my hand. Claire stepped inside carrying a small box. Her eyes went from the half-packed room to my face, then to the envelope. She turned pale. "Where did you get that?" "It fell out of one of your books. Give it to me." Her voice was low, afraid, maybe, but I was past hearing differences that small. "Who is he?" I asked. "Evan, who is he?" She looked toward the piano. The ring was still there, because apparently I enjoyed torturing myself with symbolism. "You shouldn't have looked through that. I shouldn't have had to find it." Her mouth opened, then closed. I held up the envelope. My hand shook. Hospital parking. A motel outside Salem. Money transfers. A picture of you with him when you were a kid. A note saying not to tell me. And you ended our engagement by telling me I was too small for your life. I didn't say you were small. You said I was a room with no windows. Her eyes filled. For one terrible second, I wanted to stop. I wanted to put the envelope down, make tea, and pretend we could still back away from the cliff. But I had been quiet too long. If you met someone else, say it. If he was always there, say that. If I was just the stable man you kept around while you figured it out, at least have the decency to stop making me solve the puzzle. Claire shook her head, but she didn't answer fast enough. That silence did more damage than a confession could have. "You don't understand." She said. I laughed once. It came out broken. "That is what people say when the truth is worse than the lie. I never wanted to hurt you. Then you chose an impressive method by accident." She flinched. Good, I thought, and immediately hated myself for it. I set the envelope on the coffee table instead of throwing it. That felt like the last decent thing left in me. "You made me believe loving me was a limitation," I said. "You could have left. You could have stopped loving me. But you didn't have to make my life sound like something to escape." Claire picked up the envelope and held it against her chest. "There are parts of my life I was ashamed to let you touch." "What does that mean?" "It means I am not as clean as the buildings I draw. Then she left, the door closed softly. No slam, no final crash, just a careful click like she still couldn't bear to wake the neighbors. I didn't sleep. By morning, anger had burned down into something dull and ugly. Around 10, Claire's mother called Marianne Whitman had never liked me much, or maybe she had never liked anyone enough for it to show. She was built from posture, pearls, and controlled disappointment. Holiday dinners at her house felt like being graded on napkin placement. When her name appeared, I assumed Claire had sent her to collect something or finish the job. I answered with, "Hello, Marianne." She skipped hello. "If you still care about my daughter, go to St. Bridget, 4th floor, West Oncology waiting area." The word oncology emptied the room. "What? Claire has handled this badly. You have probably handled parts of it badly as well. But if you let pride finish what fear started, both of you will regret it." "Marianne, who is he?" For the first time since I'd known her, she sounded old. Someone I tried to erase. People do not disappear just because we stop speaking their names. Then she hung up. I drove to the hospital with both hands locked on the wheel. St. Brigid was all glass and pale stone, too clean to be comforting. I rode the elevator with a man holding flowers and a boy in a soccer jersey eating crackers. Normal life, stacked vertically beside disaster. The 4th floor smelled like sanitizer and burned coffee. The waiting chairs were molded blue plastic. A vending machine hummed in the corner. Claire sat outside a room halfway down the hall. Her hair was unwashed, pulled into a loose knot. She had her father's gray coat folded across her lap. I knew before she said it, maybe because of the photograph. Maybe because grief has its own shape. She looked up. "My mother called you." Yes, of course she did. Through the glass, I could see the man in the bed. He looked smaller without the coat. A clear tube ran under his nose. A hospital bracelet circled his wrist. Claire's hands tightened on the coat. "His name is Daniel Reyes," she said. "He's my father." I sat down because my knees had become unreliable. She told me the story while staring at the floor. Her mother had married young. Daniel had been charming, musical, unreliable. He drank. He borrowed money from people who did not forget debts. When Claire was 6, he left after a night she barely remembered except for the sound of a glass breaking in the kitchen and her mother's voice going flat. Marianne rebuilt the story. Claire's father became a mistake not discussed, then a man not named, then almost a dead person who happened to be alive somewhere else. Claire took her mother's last name. Photos disappeared. Questions were met with silence so polished it looked like strength. 2 months ago, Claire said, "He wrote to me. He said he was sober. He said he was sick. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but he didn't want to die as a rumor." She laughed without humor. I hated him for writing. Then I hated myself for reading it. Then I went to see him. The motel was where he stayed because he couldn't afford anything else near the hospital. The transfers were for treatment and medication. The diner photo was from a day he was too weak to wait through another appointment, so she took him for pie. "The note?" I asked. "Don't tell him yet," she said. "I wrote it to myself. I was going to tell you. Then I thought I should understand what I felt first. Then wait for test results. Then after your job at the chapel. Then after any excuse I could find." She finally looked at me. The longer I waited, the more it felt like I had built a locked room in the middle of us. My throat hurt. "So you ended our engagement," I panicked. "You insulted me." "I know. No, Claire. You didn't just panic. You aimed at the one part of me you knew would bruise. You made my steadiness sound like failure because you couldn't admit your life wasn't stable." She took it without looking away. Yes, that one word did more than any defense could have done. In the room, Daniel shifted. His eyes opened. He saw Claire through the glass and lifted 2 fingers, barely a wave. Claire stood automatically. "You don't have to come in," she said. "I know." But I followed her. Daniel Reyes looked at me with tired, sharp eyes. "This the piano man?" he asked, voice rough. Claire wiped her face. "Dad what? You talked about him enough." The word dad landed between us like a fragile cup. I shook his hand carefully. His grip was weak but warm. "I caused trouble," he said. Claire started to object, but he looked at her. "I did. Long before this week. No one knew what to say. Hospitals are full of machines that keep time when people cannot." Somewhere down the hall, a piano played 3 uneven notes, then stopped. "Then tried again," Daniel smiled faintly. "That thing's been out of tune since Tuesday." I almost laughed. It hurt, but it was real. The next morning, I brought my tools. I told myself it wasn't a gesture. Not romantic, not heroic. I just couldn't sit in that hallway listening to a piano suffer when I knew how to help. The recreation room was small, with windows facing the parking garage and a shelf of donated puzzles missing half their pieces. The piano was a tired spinet with chipped keys and a middle register that sagged like an old mattress. A nurse said I could tune it if I didn't charge the hospital and didn't block the bingo cart. So I opened my case. There is mercy in work, you understand. Felt, wire, tension, pitch, small corrections. Listening, trying again. No one asked what I felt. No one asked what I planned to do about Claire. The piano simply waited for me to be useful. Claire found me there an hour later. She sat by the wall with a paper cup of hospital coffee in both hands. I didn't know you were doing this, neither did I. For a while, the only sound was the note, the lever, the note again. When I finished the middle octave, Daniel came in slowly with a nurse beside him. He wore a robe over sweatpants and moved like every step required negotiation. Claire stood, but he waved her down and lowered himself into the chair nearest the piano. Better already, he said. It's getting there. He looked at me for a long moment. She talked about you like you were the only quiet thing she trusted. Claire turned her face away. I kept my hand on the tuning lever because I needed something solid. Daniel touched one weak finger to a key. The note rang clear. Quiet isn't empty, he said. No, I answered. It isn't. Truth did not fix everything. Truth is not a broom. It does not sweep away the glass. It only turns on the light so you can see where not to step. I went home that afternoon and sat in front of the wedding piano. For the first time, I picked up the ring. It was lighter than I remembered. I thought about the woman who had worn it, the woman who had lied by omission, the girl in yellow rain boots standing beside a father everyone taught her to forget. I thought about myself too. Pain had made me arrogant in a way I hadn't wanted to admit. I had taken 5 pieces of a story and built the ugliest possible house from them. I'd been hurt, yes. Lied to, yes. But I had also wanted a villain because villains are easier to survive than frightened people. Still, Claire had hurt me on purpose. Not all the way on purpose, maybe. But enough I put the ring in the small drawer beneath the piano keys. Not back on the lid, not in the trash. Just away the next few days became a strange rhythm. Work in the morning, hospital in the afternoon, home before dark. I tuned the recreation room piano in stages, partly because the old frame couldn't take too much tension at once, partly because none of us could. Claire and I spoke carefully about Daniel's medication, about whether he needed a warmer blanket, about the nurse who called every older man sweetheart and somehow got away with it. We did not talk about the wedding until Daniel was moved from oncology to a recovery unit with better windows. On the day he was transferred, Claire asked if I would meet her at St. Mark's. Mark's was a small church tucked between a bakery and an apartment building. Easy to miss if you weren't looking. I had tuned its piano twice a year for 6 years. Claire and I had once considered it for the ceremony before choosing the coast. She said the ceiling was too low. I said low ceilings made music feel held. When I walked in, late night was passing through the stained glass and pieces of red and gold. The church smelled like old wood candle wax and dust warmed by sun. Claire sat in the back pew. No work coat, no perfect makeup, just jeans, a cream sweater, and a face that looked like it had run out of places to hide. I sat beside her, leaving a little space. She looked at that space and accepted it. I am sorry, she said. Not the quick kind. She said it slowly, like each word had to be carried by hand. I am sorry for lying to you. I'm sorry for making you feel ordinary in a way that sounded like failure. I am sorry for using ambition as a mask when what I really felt was shame. I looked at the worn hymnal rack in front of us. I spent my whole life trying to be clean, she continued. Clean name, clean career, clean apartment, clean story. Then he came back, and suddenly I was 6 years old again. I didn't know how to bring that girl to you. You could have tried. I know. You could have said, there is something ugly in my family and I don't know what to do. I know. Instead, you told me I was a room with no windows. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. You were the first place I ever wanted to rest, she said, and it scared me. Resting meant I might stop performing long enough for you to see me. I breathed in. Somewhere outside, a truck backed up with 3 soft beeps, then went silent. I still love you, I said, her face changed, hope rising too fast. But I don't trust you the way I did. The hope steadied. It became adult. Okay, she whispered. I don't want to go back. I don't want to pick up the wedding plans like nothing happened. If we try again, it has to be slow. Honest. No locked rooms. She nodded. No locked rooms. I mean it. I can't be the quiet place you visit only after you've hidden the storm. I know. I reached into my pocket and took out a key. Not the ring. The ring belonged to promises we had made when we were both telling prettier versions of the truth. The key was to my apartment. I placed it in her palm. This isn't a proposal, I said. It isn't forgiveness with a ribbon on it. It just means if you're ready to tell the truth, you can knock. She closed her fingers around it. What if I don't know how? Then start there. For the first time, she smiled a little. Small, wet, real. I stood and walked to the piano. St. Mark's had an old Baldwin that held tune better than it had any right to. I lifted the fallboard, pressed middle C, and listened. Slightly sharp, not badly. Just enough to ask for care. I opened my tool case. Claire stayed in the back pew while I worked. She didn't fill the silence. She didn't explain herself again. She didn't reach for me just because she was afraid I might leave. Outside, the light shifted. Inside, the piano slowly came back to itself. When I finished, I played a few notes, nothing impressive. Just a simple progression my father had taught me when I was a kid. Before I knew music could become a way to speak when words got tired. The sound moved through the small church and hung there. Claire sat with the key in her hand. For once, the silence between us did not feel like a secret. It felt like space, not empty. Not safe in the shallow way people say when they mean boring. It was the kind of space a room needs before anyone can open a window. I didn't know whether we would make it. I didn't know if trust could be tuned back to pitch once it had gone that far out. But I knew this. The note was not broken, it was waiting. And for the first time in weeks, so was I.